My name is Greg. And for the next little while, I want to take you through SharePoint. SharePoint's something that I've used for a really long time. I've used SharePoint, well, since its inception. And the first versions of it were a lot different than the way it looks now. And now, SharePoint is integrated into just about everything that you do inside of Office. In this session, though, I want to talk about SharePoint itself and just the significance of Microsoft SharePoint and how it's changing the way that we work. We'll talk about the goals and objectives of using SharePoint for team collaboration. We'll also discuss the core features and the capabilities, at least some of the major stuff. There's a lot to this. We'll also discuss some of the real-life applications, and I'll demonstrate some of the benefits of it. We'll also talk about how it integrates with Office 365 and how it's pretty much seamless. Then we'll discuss practical strategies. We'll talk about practical strategies when working with workflows because, well, AI and automation, that's on everybody's minds right now. I want to discuss that. I want to talk about the automation that you get with SharePoint and the possibilities that you have with it. And finally, we'll move into document management and we'll talk about the communication and just the overall sharing when you're working with Microsoft SharePoint. But first, I want to talk about one more thing. As we're going through this, and because we're talking about documents, you might be worried about the whole security aspect of things. Yes, there is security and different roles that people play inside of SharePoint. But if you're looking for more automation when it comes to security, if there are different documents that you are extremely concerned about, or you work with sensitive information, then you need to take a look at Microsoft Purview. When it comes to locking down your environment, this is what's going to help you out with SharePoint and help you out with all your files. You can't be expecting people to manage documents themselves all the time. There are certain documents that it's critical that only certain people access it. So as we're going through this, I just want you to keep that in the back of your head. SharePoint is a web application. There's no installed version of it. So you'll have to go to office.com, log in, and in and amongst all your different apps that you have, SharePoint is under the S's. A typical SharePoint site looks like this. Your navigation is on the left-hand side. You have home, documents, a library. You also have a notebook, which is a OneNote notebook. And there's another library called Pages. I've also built some other things here too. With a SharePoint site, what you're looking at is a way of being able to display information. This makes it easier and simpler to display information on a website. However, there are some other parts that comes with a SharePoint site. At the top here, if I click on New, you can create all kinds of different types of lists. Quite often, I catch people making lists inside of Excel. There's nothing wrong with that, but wouldn't you rather have some drop-downs, some checkmark boxes? Wouldn't you rather have certain things fill themselves out automatically? And that's what a list does, and more. Some of the different lists that you can create with Microsoft SharePoint are things like lists for tracking issues, onboarding employees, or going through an event itinerary. These are just different types of lists that are all part of your SharePoint site. And that way, if you really do have to track issues, there's all kinds of different workflows that are built into these. Things like travel requests with an approval workflow. And that, it can actually figure out who your manager is and send the request to your manager automatically. Or in the case of the issue tracker, you have automation in there. So when different things are assigned to different people, it not only shows up in Microsoft Teams as a notification, but it also shows up in their inbox as well. And it even shows up on their to-do list. So either way, when something's assigned to you, it's going to show up and you're going to find it. But this is just one of many different parts of SharePoint that you can use to manage your work. You have a notebook on the left-hand side. This is a OneNote notebook. Everyone that has access to the site also has access to this notebook, which is kind of perfect. Any information that you want to put in there, like notes from meetings, an FAQ maybe for the site, you could put it in the notebook. And then it's not individual documents that people are looking for or trying to find. Instead, it's like a binder. It's a notebook. Any relevant information that you think the entire site might need, you could put it in the notebook. Just depends on how you want to use that. You also have other things that are built into the site, like news. You'll notice that news sits front and center right on the home page. Imagine this. Instead of emailing a whole group of people and making an announcement like a staff barbecue event, instead, you could put the information here. Far too often, we get information delivered to our inbox. In fact, our inbox is way too overused. Instead of looking for an email that was sent a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, you can come here. And the news is always here, front and center. In fact, this is all the news that would be for the site. Anybody that belongs to the site would find all their different announcements in one spot, not in separate emails scattered throughout your inbox. So news, it helps you to communicate a lot better, a lot easier too. There's other things that I put on the site, like different web links here, and there's activity that shows you all the different things that have been happening to the site, as well as a document library, front and center. But that's the big deal with SharePoint, is the document library. Not only does it manage information on a home page like any other site, but it also has a document library. The default library is called Documents, and this is a document library. I already have documents sitting here, actually. At the top, you have a New button. This is integrated with all of your different apps. If you want to create a Word document or an Excel document, you've got a button for it right here. But you also have other capabilities as well, like being able to make a survey, a form. Instead of using SurveyMonkey, you could use this. This way, the form stays internal in your organization. But you can start building the survey right here. And this is where the survey information will be stored. So all those questions that you have inside of a survey are stored inside of an Excel file. And that's why you have the Excel symbol there. But it would exist here in the library. You can also create Visio drawings too. This is how integrated it is into your applications. These are all web applications, but of course your installed versions also have access to the site as well. When you're working with Word, all your different sites appear on the left-hand side when you go to save things. So not only do I have my OneDrive here, but I also have all my different SharePoint sites all listed on the left-hand side, which makes saving directly to a library like this a lot simpler and a lot easier. But it doesn't stop there. Once the documents are placed here, you can hover over top of a document to learn more about a document. This is a document that I have that's called DG2000. It's a product overview. And on the card, I can see the details of that. A panel opens up on the right-hand side and shows me a preview of the file. I can also see who has access to the file, and I can manage the access from here too. I can control who's allowed to open it or whether they're allowed to edit. And if I scroll through, I start to see all the metadata that belongs to the file. Metadata is just another fancy name for properties. These are all the different properties of the file. I can see things like the title, any image tags that it might have, and different keywords that might describe it. So here, I have additional metadata that I can use. I can also see things like the activity. So I can see what's happening with this document, seeing how many times it's been edited or updated, all through a details panel. But that's still not it. You can do other things, like share the document with people that don't even have access to the site. This would be internal people in your organization, but it would be people that don't have access to the SharePoint site, to the SharePoint library, or maybe access to the folder that this document is inside of. And you can easily share it. I can delete it, download it and rename it. If it's really that important, I can even pin it to the top, which allows you to showcase different documents so that they appear right at the top. Look, you got 300 documents in here. You really want to scroll through 300 documents or let other people do it? No, pin it to the top. That way, they don't have to look for it. It's front and center. And when it's no longer news, then you can edit the pin and no longer pin it to the top. There's still more. I mentioned automation. There are different workflows that are already built into SharePoint. You just have to take advantage of them, like automate here. You can create different workflows. There's already one that's configured for the SharePoint site. It's called Request Sign-Off. This uses Microsoft approvals. If you've never heard of Microsoft approvals, it's a program that is inside of Microsoft Teams. When you look at Teams, the ellipse, the 3-button period that sits on the left-hand side, that is where you'll find approvals. It's a extra application, but it allows you to go through a simple document sign-off. You can gather signatures. You can do so much with this. And rules, well, I can create different rules for different documents. If I'm concerned that somebody might modify it, or I might be concerned that somebody might delete it, these are things that I would create rules for. So immediately I'm notified and it lets me know if someone modified it or deleted it. And version history, in all seriousness, this is why I don't care what people do to my documents. On a network drive, different story. On a network drive, stay out of my documents. Yeah, in fact, stay out of my folder. But with this, I don't care who has access to my documents. And that is because of version history. You see, with version history, every time I make a change to a document, it saves a version. Every time somebody else makes a change to a document, it saves a version. So if I come back off vacation and my document doesn't look the way that it used to, well, then I can restore it. I can restore it and bring it back to the way that it was. In fact, that's not all it would actually do. The other thing that I can do with it is I can recover the document. I can make it so that, yes, I would be able to recover anything inside the document using any version whatsoever. And that's because it uses something different. You might not have used this before, but when you go to review inside of Word, you have a button to compare the different versions. This way you can see what the difference is between the first version and the current version. And because it uses track changes, you're actually able to see all the different changes the way that you would, the same way that you would by using track changes. So on the left-hand side, I would see all the different revisions that have been done to the document all in order, which is kind of nice and kind of handy. Any questions? Just drop them into the chat and I'll work them in. I'll work them into what I'm presenting. So with versions, you have a way of being able to roll things back. You have a way of being able to take a look at different changes that have been done to a document over time. It's huge. It's a huge feature. You can mark different things as final. So there is a process that you can go through where it does mark it as final, and that would be a workflow that you would use. In fact, any automation that you want to do, you can do it through integrate. You see, at the top, you have access to things like Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. And if I wanted to, I could create a whole workflow using Power Automate so that once a document has gone through certain approvals, it gets marked as a final document. And then nobody would be able to change the document. The document would be locked. And that would be all thanks to Power Automate. In fact, any type of automation that you can think of, you do it with Power Automate. Take a look at some of the different things that you can do. You could request a manager's approval for a selected file, and it would actually figure out who your manager is. You can request approval through Microsoft Teams. And there's a whole bunch more that you can do. In fact, You can even build your own. But this is Power Automate. And that is how you would automate anything that you want inside of a library. With this, we're looking to support requests and breakout subtasks and type. That is feasible. So you can definitely do something like that with Microsoft Lists. The other one that you want to take a look at, or you might want to take a look at, is Microsoft Planner. That one really supports a very interesting hierarchy. Next, I still got more stuff. Again, if I click this ellipse, I can scroll down, I can head to more, and I can check out documents. When I check out a document, it makes it read only for everybody. See, when you put stuff into SharePoint, everyone has access to the file. Everybody can change the file and do whatever it is that they need to do to the file. And yes, you can control all of that stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. But if I do want to make a change, and I don't want people in the document while I'm making changes, I can check it out. This reminds me of the old network drives. When I check it out, everybody else has to open it up as read only. But instead of running around the office, trying to figure out who opened up the document and whether they're on lunch or not, I can just hover over top of any document that's checked out. That's the checkout symbol. And if I hover over top, it will tell me who has this checked out. And if Greg really has gone on lunch, then I can go to more and discard the checkout. So in other words, even though Greg's gone on lunch, whoever is the owner of the site can come here and check the document back in so that everybody can continue working with the document if they need to. There are so many features that are built inside of a library that it's tough to demo everything, at least in a small session like this. You even have a sync button. The sync button allows you to take the documents with you. If you want to be able to work offline with documents, that's a great way of being able to do it. All you have to do is click the sync button, and it creates a synchronized copy all on your machine. And again, these are just some of the capabilities that SharePoint has. Another capability that it has, and it's a fairly big one, is the ability to build different applications that would use this library. And think of this. Say you have a road crew. They're responsible for filling in potholes. You could create an application that allows them to take their phone, take a picture, and the picture would automatically get dropped into here and go through a whole workflow process. So that would be an app for their phone. No programming required. You don't have to be a programmer to build the app. You just have to have the vision. And Power BI, well, that would allow me to visualize this library. I'd be able to see different metrics like how large the library is, how big each file is, and how much space it's taking up. All kinds of different types of visuals that I could create with this. And if you've never heard of Power BI before, I promise, when it comes to visuals, you're missing out. You start building charts and graphs inside of Power BI, I'm going to warn you, it's going to completely ruin charts and graphs in Excel for you. Excel is still an excellent tool. It's excellent with formulas and working with data. But when it comes to visuals, you have to admit, it falls a little short. And Power BI, you'll be impressed. But these are all built into SharePoint. You have all of these different tools if you need them. It's no longer a technical tool. Now, this is more meant for end users. Even the design of this, there's no programming involved. If I go back to home, this is the most important page that you have in SharePoint. This is your home page, and your home page is made up of different parts. To edit the website, they've made it fairly easy and fairly simple. At the top, you have things like an immersive reader. If you haven't seen the immersive reader yet, or if you haven't used it yet, it makes reading things a lot simpler and a lot easier, especially if you have different challenges reading. You also have analytics to let you know about your SharePoint site so you know what's popular, what's not popular. If you have different libraries and different documents, it's kind of good to know how often those documents are being accessed or what parts of the website are the most popular. On the far right-hand side, I have an edit button. The edit button is only available to owners. So that would be how you would edit your site. Could you expand on a field crew recording on site conditions and parsing that on the back end? Um, I think you and I would have to have a bit of a conversation. I would need a little more background information about exactly what it is you're recording. But if you're talking audio and video, take a look at Microsoft Stream. All right. That's a better way of managing a lot of that stuff. And SharePoint does have specific media libraries. So when you create a library, don't use a document library for what you're doing. You want to use a media library. And then there'll be different bells and whistles that you will really enjoy with that. On the right-hand side, I have an edit button. The owner is allowed to edit, just the owner. So when I click on edit, there's no software that I use. You used to have something called SharePoint Designer, and not anymore. So when I click on edit, I have all these different web parts that I can use. This is how I extend the functionality of the page. This is how I add different things to the page that would add functionality to it or design to it. And you have lots. There are AI agents that you can drop in. You can build your own AI agents using Copilot. You have banners and buttons and galleries, and you could even embed a video from YouTube. You have tons of functionality that you can embed inside of your front page. And the front page, well, that front page, it sits in a library. That library is called Pages. Even this library is special. This library is where you would find your news stories. It's also where you would find your home page. And there's a schedule for this. Inside of this library, it has a schedule. You're able to schedule when the different news stories are published, or you can schedule when your different new home pages would be published and everybody would see it. So this page library, this is very important. This page library manages the news, it manages your pages, but most importantly, it has a schedule attached to it. And you can schedule when different news stories and different home pages kind of take over. I'll head back to home, and that'll take me right back here. Anything that you've built for the site sits in Site Contents. This is where you'll find everything. Everything that has been built for the site, it all sits here. My document library, I have another library called Site Assets, and I have a list of a staff training event. I also have a library called Site Pages. You can see exactly what these things are just by looking at the type. It even shows you how many items are there. Every single site is also given a recycling bin. In here, anything that gets deleted will sit here for approximately 93 days. After 93 days, this will automatically purge itself. So you'll have to talk to your administrator in order to get anything back. But 3 months, 3 days, that should be long enough in order for you to figure out whether you needed that or not. When it comes to accessing the site, when it comes to permissions for the site, all permissions are handled just in the upper right-hand side. So in the upper right-hand side, once it refreshes, there we are, I can click on the gear and head to Site Permissions. When I go to Site Permissions, these are the different groups. But as a tip, always go to Advanced Permissions. This is neat if I want to share the site and see a list of the owners, see a list of the members and the visitors. But if you really want to control permissions, you're going to want to go to the advanced permissions. In the advanced permissions is where you can create additional groups. It's where you can change the level of permission that the different groups have. So this screen is a pretty old screen. This one goes all the way back to 2010. But this is how you would create groups. This is how you would grant permission to different people. And I love this one. This is how you would check permissions. If a user is having trouble accessing the site or accessing any part of the site, you would be able to check permissions just by putting in the user's name and seeing the level of permission that they actually have. And that would help you to diagnose what exactly is going on. You have settings for everything. It doesn't matter what it is. Even on the left-hand side here, where I've created a nice little training plan or an event, there are settings in every single part of this. This gear will constantly change. I've created a couple of new things here. Here I have a staff training event, and this is using Microsoft Lists. This is what a list looks like. A list has your session's name, but you have these different drop downs where you can sort and filter and group. You have all kinds of different types of views that you can enjoy. And you can even create your own views if you need to. And in a list, you can share this with other people that don't have access to the site. You can export it and export it to Excel. And if you really want to create a form for this, well, you have a button for forms, and it's easy for you to create a brand new form. That's it. My form's done. All I have to do is give the form a name. So I'll call this one New Event. And now I've got a form. Nice, easy, simple form to work with. Automates here too. Yep. You even have approvals here as well. People can put stuff on the list and it has to go through an approval workflow. The amount of different programs, the amount of flexibility that you have with this is absolutely incredible. And this is just lists. I can create additional flows, create different rules, and even create different apps that would use this list in the app, and the app would be used on someone's tablet or phone. The other thing that you can create is a plan. This is Microsoft Planner. And if you haven't heard, this is the new project. Eventually, they're going to phase out the old project that some of us are very familiar with. And instead, they're replacing it with this. Yep, this is going to be the new project. It has a grid. Really just a spreadsheet. But this would be a list of different things that need to get done. And I can assign different things to different people. It's automated. When I assign anything to anybody, they get an email. They get a notification in Teams. And it shows up in their to-do list in Outlook. And the board view, this is the latest thing with project management. The board view makes it easy for me to juggle things around. I can easily add different tasks, but I can also move those tasks to go underneath different lists. So if this is something that I have to do before the launch, then I just send this out. I can move this over and send out the emails or do whatever I need to do. This is my plan. These are called buckets. When I click on a task, I can fill out the name, set the due date, and as I've already mentioned, when I assign this to different people, they get 3 different notifications in a sense. One in Teams, one in their inbox, and one that shows up on their to-do list. Oh yeah. And if the due date goes by and they don't complete it, this thing emails them every single morning at 9 o'clock until they get it done. So I don't have to do it. It's a piece of software that's going to bug them. You even have charts. For the higher ups, you've got charts. When I'm working on a project, the last thing I want to do, status updates. Instead, I can use this for my status update. In fact, I can even take this and I can even embed this inside of a SharePoint page. So they can just go to the home page and see how we're doing. And at some point, somebody's going to bug me for a schedule. There's the schedule. Does it integrate with Outlook? Not exactly. It doesn't have to. It integrates with Microsoft To Do that is in your Outlook. So when you're looking at all the different things that you have to do, head to To Do. That's where you'll see it. Planner? Yeah, Planner shows up. I'll just switch one thing around. I'm just going to make this my home page. And if I go back, here we are. If I go to new, Planner's right here. That's how I create my new plan. I go to new, I click on plan. And this is Microsoft Planner. So I can give it a name. This. You'll want to show it up in the navigation on the left-hand side, because if you don't, you'll have a tough time finding it. So always make sure that you put a check mark there. When I click on create, that creates my plan. Now the plan sits on the left-hand side. If I click on home, there's my staff SharePoint training. The tools and the flexibility that they give you is just incredible. I think the hardest part of SharePoint, honestly, is coming up with the design of everything. How are you going to use the libraries? How are you going to use the lists? And these are things that you're going to need to discuss with your team. The people that have access to your site, you're going to want to talk to them. Talk to them about news and how news is going to replace me sending mass emails to different groups of people. We'll talk about the notebook, how the notebook is used. Our meeting notes could go in there. An FAQ could go in there. All kinds of different things could go in there. It's a binder. Whatever you would use a binder for, that's what you're using a notebook for. The libraries are used to store documents, but not just store documents. They're used to protect the documents. They're used so that the document can go through different workflows to get approved and to be finalized, or to even move to a different environment once it's been finalized. Yeah, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with these different workflows. If you haven't seen Power Automate yet, do yourself a huge favor. Take a look at Power Automate. It can automate anything in any program that Microsoft has, or believe it or not, anybody else. Yeah, it just doesn't work with Microsoft products. Power Automate works with all of your software. And that's not something I'm used to saying with Microsoft in the same sentence. You have Pages. And Pages, well, you can have all kinds of different types of home pages. But what you don't need is any extra software outside of this to be able to set up your site and configure your site. For the first time ever, you have a complete solution right in front of you. And because it's integrated with all of your different products, when I go to save different things, I'm saving directly to my SharePoint sites. And that way, it makes me more efficient, a lot more efficient. Even the searching. When you go to search a site, I can search a site for anything. And it breaks it down into files, sites, news, and images. It'll use metadata. If that's not the actual document's name, then it will use metadata to find whatever it is that you're looking for. So searching a site, they've made this a lot simpler and a lot easier to use than what I've used before. But as I said, the hardest part of this is designing it all. You want to sit down and you want to plan out the whole thing. You want to figure out what works, what doesn't work, or what's going to work with your group, what you're going to use, and what you're not going to use. So spend a lot of time on planning this. But if you change your mind, there's nothing on a website, there's nothing on SharePoint that can't be rolled back. Anything that you do on SharePoint, you'll be able to get it back. You'll be able to fix it. So it might be a work in progress, but you can always get it back. Designing is the hardest part. Figuring out how you're going to use this. Hopefully, you've learned a few things. And hopefully, you've enjoyed our webinar. Joy. You're on mute.
Oh, Joy, you're muted.
In 2025, we're still saying, hey, you're muted. Sorry about that. Greg, thank you so much. That is a lot of food for thought. I think the possibilities are kind of endless. The integration is amazing. If you have any questions, because I think there's still one or two in the chat, we'll get to them. Keep putting your questions and comments in the chat. I'm going to walk you through a couple of things from Great Canadian Training, and then we will get to all your questions. Okay, so if you want to learn more about SharePoint and you're on our website and you go to our courses menu and you go down to SharePoint, we have several SharePoint courses. We have SharePoint Starting Point, the basics. This is really good for new users, or if you just want to make sure you really understand the basics. I mean, from what Greg has been showing us, we can see it's pretty user-friendly. And in the basics course, you're going to learn to work with libraries, sites, the search feature, and leveraging Power Automate. The next course here is we have SharePoint Owner Essentials. So if you're new to managing SharePoint sites or you want to manage them more effectively, this is a great course. You're going to learn about creating sites and managing permissions, content, configurations, and you even go through some common issues you're going to encounter with SharePoint and how to troubleshoot them. And then going down, we have advanced SharePoint site management for owners. So if you're comfortable with SharePoint's basics, you're going to dive deeper into file management, retention policies, metadata, and content types in this course. And then at the very beginning of the webinar, Greg mentioned very briefly Microsoft Purview, which is the software you would use to govern and protect and manage your organization's data all across the organization. I'm going to get Amy to put a link in about Microsoft Purview if that's a piece of software you're interested in looking a little more into. We're finding it's not usually IT that's setting up Purview, so Amy's also going to include a list of usually the job titles, and it's not limited to this list, but just so you can see who is the one working with Microsoft Purview. If that's a piece of software you're interested in learning more about, just reach out to us directly on that. If you're interested, so for example, if you're very comfortable with the Microsoft 365 Essentials or Basics, right, the basic apps that you're using, we have a really good Microsoft 365 integrating with OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint, because that's kind of usually the next question. What's the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint? How do they interact? How do they interact with Teams? We also have a planner course, like Greg mentioned, planner. And that talks about how it integrates with To-Do, Planner, and Teams, how to set it all up properly. There's some background things you need to understand with how Microsoft is organizing them so that we set them up properly. We have a new workshop about boosting your productivity. If you're comfortable with the essentials in Microsoft 65, we're finding a lot of people want to start getting into things like Greg mentioned Streamer. We have Loop is a really big one now. We talked about forms, lists. It goes on and on. If you can log in online to your Microsoft account, it is kind of crazy, Greg, like how many Microsoft apps there are. So that's kind of the next step is kind of exploring what can we use. Whiteboard, you have a whiteboard, like there's all kinds of apps in there. And then if you are interested in learning more about Power Automate, we do have a Power Automate course. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. There we go. Power Automate. And a lot of people want to work with their custom like workflows and what they want to do and set up. And if you have any questions or need any help, just reach out to us directly. I wanted to just remind everyone we still have more live webinars coming up this year and into 2026. The next one next month is actually also going to be hosted or presented by Greg. And something everyone is talking about these days is using AI and the practical applications for it in everyday use in our business. Use of AI under different categories like how to search or like I'm saying that wrong, sorry, doing research, data analysis, the different types of AI tools we can use. And then we have other stuff. We're going to be talking about all the new features and upskilling our Microsoft Teams use. We're going to get into business writing and even file management. That's still a big one these days. And then if you are signed up to our newsletter, we're going to have a new free download coming out, which is SharePoint's best practices. That'll be coming out. If you're not signed up to our newsletter and you would like to be, at the bottom of most of our web pages, you can sign up. Okay, Greg, let's now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's jump over and answer some questions. I was going to say there was one earlier about SharePoint lists.
Yeah, there was one that was talking about I thought I saw it here. It was about lists. Yeah, tracking support requests and breaking out subtabs and subtasks and assignments. Yeah, you can actually do that. You can associate uh, and do some interesting outlining with lists. So yes, definitely possible.
So Greg, a quick question then for you. So when in SharePoint, you're referencing, you can set up a planner board from here. You can set up like Power Automate workflows. You can, get into Visio, Excel, all kinds of stuff. We're saying you can set these up and use them in SharePoint, but you can also use them individually in their own applications, and it'll keep everything up to date. If you're using something like Planner, it'll also integrate into Teams, but it's all integrated and it's just wherever you use it.
You got it. You got it. That's exactly right. Is there a way to integrate two SharePoint sites? Yeah, what you're going to want is what's called a hub site, which technically is a communication site. So if you want to link two sites together and you want a neat way of being able to navigate between the two of them, look into creating a hub site. You'll need IT's help for that one. They'll create or help you create the hub site, and then you'll have to associate the sites. But then it basically joins the two sites together and makes it easy to navigate between the two. And you can even do some interesting stuff with permissions between the two sites. But should we be tracking and moving them from list to planner? We integrate between sites and hub pages. I see. Sorry. So we're using forms integrated in lists for support right now, but should we be tracking and moving them to list and planner? Um, for me, that's two different things because I would want them to report it in a list, and then I would want to go through the list and kind of make sure that this is the list. And then I would actually export the list, import it into Planner, and then that's where I would actually assign and do my work, so that I kind of am using both, and I would automate that. So that way, anything that shows up in the list, once it's been approved, it would show up in Planner, and then I can assign different things to different people that way. And that way, we've got timelines, and I've got a bunch of other stuff that I can kind of play with inside of Planner.
Hey, Greg, I do actually have a question for you. Does Copilot interact with SharePoint and automate anything in SharePoint for us?
Well, that's the reason for the license for the paid version of Copilot. One of the big advantages of actually paying for the pro version of Copilot is the fact that it integrates with everything, including SharePoint. So you could ask it different questions like, do I have access to a document that has these things in the document. And it would actually search the content of all the documents that you have access to. If you don't have access to the document, but it exists, Copilot won't give you access to it or won't show you that it even exists.
Unless it's the paid version of
Yeah,
Copilot. Yeah.
that's the paid version. The free version doesn't integrate with anything. It's more of just an AI for you to ask questions. But if you're still on the fence with AI, stop Googling stuff. Use AI instead, and you'll like that better.
And not to plug our next webinar, but come to our next webinar on AI tools.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, you've been doing all the automation on the list. Yeah. Try Planner. It's neat, especially the premium version of Planner. Well worth it. Really worth it for project management.
So Greg, since you're mentioning other versions of Planner, do you want to just explain very briefly, like there is the version that comes with your license, but then there are upgraded versions you can also purchase?
Yeah, there's Planner Premium, which really is a project management tool. With the premium version, you have a ton of customization that's all at your feet. So you can customize everything inside a planner. But the big takeaway is the fact that you've got access to a Gantt chart, and the scheduling is a lot different. Same with some of the views, but the big thing is having a Gantt chart and being able to organize things that way.
Very nice. And then I do actually have one more question. On the lines of Purview, if that was something you were interested in using, how does it change the SharePoint library if you integrate Purview into your
Excellent question.
organization?
That's
Yep.
a good question. Sometimes there are sensitive documents that people work on. And in order to ensure that your documents are properly safeguarded, when you use Purview with a SharePoint library, Purview will actually read the documents and determine whether that's a sensitive document or not. It'll determine whether this is a document that should only be accessed by the finance department. And even though it's in a spot where other people would have access to it, if you tried to access it, it would tell you that you're not from the finance department and you can't access the document. So what it helps to eliminate is the different mistakes that sometimes people make with data. It happens. But if you automate that whole process, then you sleep at night. You don't have to worry about your documents in SharePoint because Purview is properly protecting them. And who does spring cleaning? Most people don't. So with Purview, it also helps you with the spring cleaning too. Anything you can share on topic of records management on SharePoint best practices? Yes. Take a look at using content types to help you with records management. Being able to identify what is a contract, what is a signed contract, what is a purchase order, or what is an invoice is vital to helping you manage your documents. It's not just a Word document. It's more than that. And the way that you tell SharePoint and Purview it's more than that is by using content management and content types. So take a look at content types. The other thing, there's a specific type called a document set. Take a look at a document set. It is well worth it. And if you're looking at going to a flat file system using metadata, take a look at document sets. They'll make the users happy. It'll make you happy. It'll make them feel like nothing's changed, but there'll be a ton of things that you can do with the document sets that'll make your users happy and make the transition easier for them. Anytime.
Perfect. Yep. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And like we mentioned, we're going to send out an email to everyone that's registered, even if you couldn't come today, with a link to the recording. As Greg showed us today, you can take a YouTube recording and put it on your SharePoint site. So you can put this webinar up on your SharePoint site as a reference. But anyways, we'll send you a follow-up email. It'll be a link to the recording. There's a handout. Anything that we've referenced outside the webinar, we will, like Purview, will make sure there's links and everything to it. In the follow-up email, there's a very brief survey. Please feel free to fill it out. Tell us what we did, what we can improve, what topics you want to see. We really look forward to hearing from you. And everyone, thank you so much for coming and participating in our webinar. And Greg, thank you so much for the information you shared with us.
Thank you.
So thank you so much to everyone, to our host, Joy, to our presenter, Greg. It was an amazing webinar. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our attendees as well for taking the time to join us. I'm going to close the room now, but everyone will receive a link to the replay of the webinar and a practical handout within 2 business days. And as Joy mentioned, we're going to include any links and items that we mentioned. So thank you again to everyone, and I hope you all have a great afternoon. Bye for now.